So let's talk about some of the things that we've seen around the world. I've been fortunate enough to do some grad recruitment in those three major markets, US, UK, Australasia. And we see some things starting to pop up. One of the trends that I see really going forward is a whole notion of job fit. Hiring individuals that are really going to fit the role, not just sort of a broadband hiring. I think gone are the days of the one-size-fits-all personality test. Any of us that have been around a while, that's just been accepted. That's what we did, and we just do a broad brush personality test, and we fit that individual into the job. It's reversing now. With the use of culture fit and looking at competency-based testing, we see a lot of change coming from the one-size-fits-all. Culture fit, I mentioned just a second ago. We'll talk in more detail about that in a couple of slides. This is becoming more and more of a factor. Let's face it, we may be interviewing people to come to work for us. They're interviewing us to see if they're going to come to work for us, if we're worthy to be their employers. So that's a big part, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, things like employment branding and employee value propositions. And finally, the organization of the future. This is a fun slide. I've been doing this kind of work for over 20 years. And I keep hearing a phrase that HR wants to get a seat at the table. But let me ask you something. Have there ever been enough chairs? Typically a couple chairs short, aren't we? HR has been unable to really capture, harness, and leverage their contribution to the organization. So what happens is, instead of being a strategic partner, guiding and directing the strategy and the operations of the organization, we tend to be viewed more as a cost center, don't we? A bit of a burden. Something that the first budget we're going to cut is going to come from HR. Even though people are our most important asset, maybe next year they'll be an even more important one. So we're going to start slicing away. You know, it's funny, it keeps going on. It doesn't matter what country I'm in or when I talk about it. For over 2 decades, the organization of the future has been something that HR has been striving for to get a seat at the table. And I'll tell you, some of the tools today that are in the marketplace make data available so that the first time, I think, HR really has an opportunity to sit down and show their contribution and show what's happening in their world, their selection world, their development world. And Trudy's going to share some hard numbers. The empirical data is there. Leveraging it is the key to really getting a seat at the table. I mentioned competency, broad brush personality test going away. We were talking just a moment ago about resiliency being such an important component of it in some organizations around success, but how does one measure resiliency? How does one measure goal orientation and drive? These are some things that we're starting to take a look at. Competency-driven assessment is coming on strong. And we're also customizing it down to the specific business units. So an employer might have an assessment program, a selection program, and it's going to vary by business unit and job within business unit. And if you've got a really good partner and a really good strategic selection tool, you can actually customize to fit those roles. So we see specialization taking on more and more an active role in selection just worldwide. Big part of global recruitment right now. We have a little phrase. You've heard of a hiring freeze? Well, in the US there's a hiring frost. The ground's not completely frozen, but it is pretty doggone hard. So when things slow down and your budgets get cut and you are not hiring at the same rate you were, what then do you do? Well, the focus goes on to development, doesn't it? Show me hands. Who's more in recruitment than development? You're more of a recruiter. Okay. Okay. How about development and training? Who's here from development training? Okay. And it's actually been flipped in most of these cities. So there's a bit more recruitment here than development. But if we're not hiring as many as we used to, it's key that we retain the ones we have on board. It's key that we can grow our leadership pool for the future. So we see development and succession planning taking on a higher level of activity inside HR groups around the world. So take a look at your own process and see, is hiring going to slow down? Is selection going to slow down? We have tools that can help you identify who's going to fit in the role day one and who's got the caliber and potential to advance going forward so that you can fill your open slots. Finally, just sort of an end slide here. Why grad recruitment is so important to us. It's efficiencies, it's the technology that we leverage. Typically, when you've got a few hundred spots, you have a few, 1,000 applications and resumes. Who wants to sort through resumes like in the old days across a kitchen table on a Saturday? I see a few people smiling and nodding their heads. You don't have to anymore. Because of the technology, because of tools like what we're doing online, you can actually sift through an enormous amount of folks very efficiently and objectively. We like that a lot. We mentioned data. What we like about grad recruitment and just recruitment in general is there's a ton of data around performance. If we can actually follow someone from the day they're hired through training into the operational role and measure their effectiveness, we can actually start to tie correlation between assessment score and job performance. That's our value proposition. Again, aligning employment decisions with business results, giving you the data that helps you sit down at the table, demonstrate what you're doing for the organization, how every day you're making an impact to make the organization more profitable, more successful, and maybe, who knows, even a more fun place to work. So those are just some of the themes that we see as we travel around the world. It's been quite an education to understand some of these things. We'll be doing this again in the UK. I'll share some other points with you. Just want to let you know that in the UK there's about a 17% increase in grad vacancies right now. And in the US, at last count, there was a 25% increase in signing bonus being offered to grads. A few years ago, one of my friends had a company that decided it'd be a good idea to bring recruits on. We'd offer them a BMW lease, a convertible for 2 years. They had a lot of BMWs go out, and 2 years later, they were out of business. So if you're going to make an impact, be smart. And it's great to attract bright people, but you've got to sustain your business as well. I'm going to turn the floor over to Trudy and let her take it down another level and show you some actual results and give you a glimpse into the future in some of our products. I appreciate your attention, and again, thanks for coming out.